For me, it all comes back to the alter ego. For me, it's really a mindset where I'm not, it's like I'm giving myself permission to go a certain place with my brain that I know I need to go there. That's storytelling. Like, what is the story that we're telling ourselves throughout the day? What's the story that we're living and our thoughts and the actual story of our action? There's so much of it is up to our own design. And I think when thinking of it that way from the perspective of the storyteller, of a narrator, you realize it's malleable. Being able to apply that to your personal life, I think, is a really important key to achieving our goals. And maybe that's something I can teach people how to do, which I think it's mostly just through journaling.
I think that's fascinating, and I am an infrequent journaler, but I, about this time last year, did about 90 days of journaling. And where I find the journaling extremely helpful is, yes, it's very helpful when you are writing or typing or however you're doing it, because you're processing that in a verbal format and telling a story. But the real meat of the comes months later, when I totally forgot what I wrote, but yet I'm there back in my words, experiencing this at the same time. So that is with my old self that has talked to my current self, which when it was written was my future self. So thinking of that in terms of alters, or what was the word you used originally? I'm writing on envelopes here.
Alter ego.
Alter egos. Yeah. So thinking of that in terms of alter egos, and let's tie it into a little bit of flow neurology about presence and future. The past is behind us, so we're not going to worry about that at the moment. We're going to worry about where we are right here, right now, and where we're going, and what is the story that we tell around that, and how. And this is just how I see it: an overall sense of personal involvement of the default mode network is just worrying about how I'm going to be in this situation, worrying how I'm going to be in those situations, which we all know most of the time never happens, but. When I get confused about flow, I think of surfing, and I'm not a good surfer, but I do and can achieve flow state on a wave. So that's my personal experience. And when you're on a wave, it has varying levels of steepness. And as the wave gets steeper, the situation becomes more critical. And I find what I do is it's an imaginary point in the future of the wave that I focus on. And it's not real. I don't see a real line, but I see an imaginary line of how I want to be approaching that section of the wave. In yoga, that fixed point is called a Drishti. And it's usually used for balancing poses in yoga, where you stare at a point so that you don't lose your balance, right? But when you're on the water, that point is moving, as are you, as is the water. And when you lose flow, a fear state overcomes me. I'll put it in the first person. A fear state overcomes me, and everything falls apart. The way I would describe that to someone who's never surfed is, one of the cool things about surfing that you realize pretty early on is, how do you steer this thing? One of the best ways to steer is you look where you want to go. And so when you're in a flow state, you're looking where you want to go. But let's say, for example, there are some rocks. Those rocks aren't moving. But if you lose your flow and you start looking at the rock, everything about you starts moving towards the rock. You have to look away from the rock. So as we imagine our future self, realizing that in many ways is an altar, and just to kind of pay attention to how am I in this current situation addressing my view of the future? If it is fear based, I find that one of the best ways to get yourself back into a flow state, not while I'm on the waves, but just in general, is for me to talk to myself about how I'm feeling. I'm feeling very anxious now, or I'm feeling afraid right now. By doing that, that changes the neurologic structure. It gets different brain networks up. You're acknowledging your current sense. And I don't know if that brings up anything for you, but I'd be curious as to your perspectives on the future self, that point in the future where we're looking at as an alter.
That's perfect, Jake. And I think you really sort of outlined the psychology of the alter ego effect, where because really it's that alter ego is that's your future self. It's an icon of the future self that you want to embody.